A taste of home in the Windy City. Jonathan was a man of two worlds. Born amidst the electric hum of New York City, his heart held the quiet, vibrant warmth of his Grenadian heritage. For years, he'd chased a mirage of the perfect life across the American landscape, moving from state to state, each new horizon promising a little more stability, a little more peace. The journey was a blur of transient addresses and fleeting hopes. Finally, he landed in Chicago. The city's sheer scale felt grounding, and soon, he found his footing with a steady job working in a large warehouse. The work was honest, the hours predictable, but as the seasons changed, a different kind of emptiness crept in, the gnawing ache of loneliness. One cold Chicago evening, Jonathan, sighing, downloaded a dating app. The search began. He swiped, chatted, and went through the motions with perhaps 5 to 10 different women. They were pleasant enough, but none sparked the deep connection he longed for. He was about to delete the app altogether when a profile stopped him cold. Her name was Siobhan. Siobhan was a vision, a beautiful black woman whose profile spoke of a lively spirit. Even better, she shared a piece of his history. She was from Brooklyn, NY, now calling Chicago home, just like him. Jonathan wasn't the only one trying to catch her attention. Siobhan was popular on the app, managing a steady stream of conversations. Some suitors moved quickly to direct texts, others slid into her Instagram DMs. Jonathan, however, was persistent and thoughtful. He liked her look, and their initial conversations felt easy. He made it a habit to text her every other morning and every other night, a steady, rhythmic presence in her inbox. Siobhan's replies were short, a single message, maybe two, a casual acknowledgement of his effort. This went on for a few weeks until frustration nudged Jonathan. He was putting in maximum effort for minimum return. He decided on a simple, honest ultimatum. One morning, he typed, "Girl, if you don't want to talk to me, I'm going to delete you." Siobhan read the message. The bluntness, the sheer clarity of his intention, cut through the noise of all the other generic flirtations. In that moment, something shifted. She realized Jonathan wasn't just another guy playing a numbers game, he was genuine, and he valued his time. Nobody else was putting in this much effort. She felt a sudden, profound spark of respect, which quickly bloomed into an intense attraction. She replied immediately, and the conversation finally took off. Within a week, they met up. The connection they felt online was amplified tenfold in person. Jonathan and Siobhan were inseparable from that first date. The months that followed were a whirlwind of new love, shared laughter, and building a life together in a city that finally felt like home. Their happiness was soon compounded by an even greater joy, the birth of their baby girl, Talia. The initial bliss, however, began to face its first real challenge. Life with a newborn is a crucible, and the stress, sleepless nights, and new responsibilities began to take their toll. Arguing and disagreeing became an every other day occurrence. "We just don't see eye to eye on anything anymore," Jonathan sighed one night. "It's like we're strangers trying to run the same house," Siobhan countered, tears in her eyes. They were in unfamiliar territory, learning not only how to be partners but also how to become co-parents. Co-parenting was a new, often messy, skill for both of them. Yet, through the frustration, a deeper truth emerged. They talked, not with the intention to win, but to understand. They realized the fighting wasn't a sign that they were broken, but that they were still learning how to work together under the beautiful, immense pressure of raising a human being. They loved each other too much to let the chaos of new parenthood break their bond. Jonathan, the wanderer, had finally found his anchor, and Siobhan, the sought-after beauty, had found the one man who saw her clearly enough to call her out. They decided, hand in hand, that they would work it out, for themselves and for their daughter, Talia. Their love story wasn't just about finding each other, it was about the daily, messy commitment to keep choosing each other. Finding rhythm and respect, Jonathan and Siobhan decided they wouldn't let their arguments define their love. They were committed, but commitment needed a plan. Their solution wasn't dramatic, but practical: the Saturday morning summit. Every Saturday, immediately after Talia's 9 a.m. feeding and while she was settled for a nap, Jonathan and Siobhan would meet at the kitchen table. No phones, no TV, just coffee and a notepad. Their first summit was tense. "We need a schedule for the night feedings," Siobhan started, her voice tight. "I've done the last 5 in a row, and I can't keep functioning at work." Jonathan, who usually defended himself instantly, paused. He saw the circles under her eyes. "You're right," he admitted. "I assumed you just took care of it. That was selfish." They wrote down a simple rotation. Jonathan handled the 1 a.m. feeding, and Siobhan took the 4 a.m. They even devised a tap-out signal, a gentle squeeze of the partner's hand, to ask for relief without a full-blown confrontation. The core of their conflict, they discovered, wasn't love but differing styles. Jonathan, with his Grenadian New York blend, was precise and structured about money and time. Siobhan, the Brooklynite, was more fluid and focused on emotional connection. One major argument centered on Talia's toys. Jonathan felt Siobhan bought too many unnecessary things, cluttering their small apartment. At the next summit, Siobhan expressed, "When I buy her a small outfit or a new book, it's not about the stuff. It's about me feeling like I'm creating a happy, fun world for her. It's how I show love." Jonathan reflected on his own childhood, where resources were often tight. "For me, stability is the greatest love. I see every dollar as security for her future." They found a compromise. They designated a small, strict budget for fun extras each month that Siobhan could spend freely, and Jonathan took over investing the rest of the savings into Talia's college fund. They learned that their different approaches weren't opposition, they were complementary strengths. As the weeks turned into months, the summits started to feel less like negotiations and more like check-ins. They transitioned from solving arguments to planning the future. They learned to preface critiques with empathy. Instead of, "You put her down too early, now she's crying again," it became, "Hey, I see you tried putting her down a little early, you must be exhausted. Next time, let's try reading one more book, just to make sure she's settled." The shift from "you" versus "I" to "we" was the key. They were a team facing a magnificent, daunting project, parenthood. Jonathan's persistent, consistent nature, the very thing that had won Siobhan over, became the steady rudder for their family. Siobhan's warmth and emotional intelligence taught Jonathan how to lighten up and appreciate the spontaneous joy of the present moment. One Sunday, while watching Talia attempt to crawl, Siobhan leaned her head on Jonathan's shoulder. "Remember when I almost deleted you?" she whispered. Jonathan smiled. "And I was ready to let you go." Funny how the biggest threats can lead to the deepest commitment. They had found their rhythm. They were no longer two individuals trying to raise a baby, but Unit Talia, a loving, imperfect, and resilient family built on the bedrock of respect and unwavering love. Chicago was home, and they were finally, truly settled, building a legacy in the city of wind. With the chaotic early months of co-parenting behind them, Jonathan and Siobhan settled into a gratifying, if still demanding, life. Their home in Chicago was no longer just a place to sleep, it was the foundation of their emerging legacy. Jonathan made sure that even in the heart of the Midwest, Talia felt the vibrant heartbeat of her heritage. He'd often play old calypso and soca music on Sunday mornings, the rhythms filling their apartment, prompting Siobhan to laugh and dance with a delighted Talia in her arms. He taught Talia the Grenadian word for grandmother, ma, and spoke to her in soft, musical tones that carried the lilt of the islands. Siobhan, in turn, ensured Talia had the grit and creativity of a born and bred New Yorker. She took Talia on trips to the Chicago Museum of Contemporary Art, pushing her stroller through Millennium Park, narrating the city's stories with the confident, rapid-fire cadence of a woman who grew up navigating subway maps and street smarts. Talia, growing rapidly, was a perfect blend of both. She had Jonathan's meticulous, thoughtful eyes and Siobhan's contagious, expressive smile. Jonathan's steady job at the warehouse had given him the stability he always craved. His discipline with money, once a source of friction, was now their greatest asset. He was promoted to a supervisory role, reflecting his strong work ethic. Siobhan, inspired by their successful communication, decided to channel her passion for connection into a new pursuit. She took online courses and began working part-time as a social media consultant for local Chicago businesses, leveraging her networking skills and creative energy. Their combined efforts meant they could start looking past their small apartment toward buying their first home, a concrete step into the secure future Jonathan had long sought. The greatest casualty of early parenthood had been their time as a couple. Recognizing this, they scheduled a monthly date night, guarded fiercely by their newly hired babysitter, Jonathan's trusted, slightly eccentric coworker, Miguel. Their dates were simple: deep dish pizza, a walk along the lake, or just sitting in a quiet bar, talking about things other than formula and diaper rash. These moments were essential for nurturing the spark that had ignited on a dating app. One evening, during a quiet dinner, Siobhan looked across the table at Jonathan. "You know, when you sent that, 'I'm going to delete you' text, I thought you were just playing hard to get." Jonathan chuckled, taking her hand. "No games. I just knew you were too good to waste time on, and I had already wasted too much time wandering. You made me realize Chicago wasn't just another stop, it was the destination." They had weathered the storms of transition and disagreement. They didn't just love each other, they liked who they had become together. They were the couple who proved that a demanding ultimatum and a deep commitment to communication could forge an unbreakable family bond, far from the bustling streets of their origins, right in the heart of the Windy City. The spice and the skylines. The dream of a stable life, which had brought Jonathan from the sun-drenched streets of Granada and the concrete sprawl of New York, was finally coalescing into the shape of a Chicago bungalow. With Jonathan's promotion and Siobhan's thriving consulting work, their finances were strong. Jonathan, the disciplined saver, had the down payment ready. Siobhan, the master networker, found a fantastic real estate agent. Their mission: find a home in a family-friendly Chicago neighborhood that balanced Jonathan's need for quiet security with Siobhan's desire for community and vibrancy. They focused their search on the Northwest Side, settling on neighborhoods like North Center or Lincoln Square. These areas offered tree-lined streets, excellent schools for Talia's future, and a palpable sense of community, a warm contrast to the transient feeling of their younger years. The process was challenging. Chicago's competitive market required Jonathan to temper his cautious nature with Siobhan's decisive energy. He was focused on the inspection reports and property taxes. She was focused on the natural light for Talia's nursery and the size of the backyard for summer cookouts. After several weeks, they found it, a charming, older brick house with a small, fenced-in yard. It had character, it was safe, and most importantly, it felt permanent. When their offer was accepted, they held each other in the empty living room, the echoes of their excited voices filling the space. This was not just a house, it was the physical representation of their successful partnership. With the move approaching, Jonathan felt a renewed longing to share his success with the source of his foundation, his family in Granada. Growing up in New York, he had been physically distant from the tight-knit extended family structure that defines Grenadian culture. Now, with a child of his own, he understood the value of those deep roots. He called his aunt, the matriarch of his father's side of the family, and proudly announced, "Auntie, we bought a house in Chicago. Talia has a backyard." The immediate response wasn't just congratulations, it was a firm insistence: "You must bring her home to be seen." Jonathan and Siobhan decided that their housewarming gift to themselves would be a family trip to Granada. It was crucial to Jonathan that Talia experience the warmth, the music, the strong sense of community, and the national dish, Oildown, which were the markers of his heritage. He wanted Siobhan to see where the core of his quiet strength and relentless work ethic came from. Siobhan, ever supportive, began researching flights. For her, a girl from Brooklyn, meeting his Grenadian family was the final, beautiful step in blending their two very different worlds into one strong family unit. They had started as two individuals, lonely in a massive city, connected by a screen and a bold text message. They had fought their way through the demands of new parenthood to emerge as a unified team. Now, Jonathan, Siobhan, and little Talia were ready to cement their new life in Chicago while honoring the vibrant history that brought them there. The trip to Granada was planned for the humid, vibrant stretch of August. Jonathan, Siobhan, and one-year-old Talia arrived in St. George's, instantly enveloped by the heat, the smell of salt and nutmeg, and the overwhelming energy of Jonathan's extended family. Jonathan's family was loud, loving, and entirely boundaryless by Siobhan's New York standards. They descended upon the airport, showering Talia with kisses and passing her around like a precious, well-loved trophy. Siobhan, accustomed to their quiet Chicago home and scheduled routines, felt immediately overwhelmed. Jonathan's Auntie Rose, the matriarch, insisted on taking over Talia's care, dismissing Siobhan's carefully packed organic purees and offering the baby bits of fresh mango and homemade soursop juice. "You worry too much, Jonathan," Auntie Rose declared one evening, gently pushing Siobhan away from the high chair. "In Granada, we raise the picnic together. She needs the sunshine, the freedom. Not this schedule." Siobhan bristled. She felt her authority as a mother being constantly undermined. She pulled Jonathan aside, her voice tight with suppressed frustration. "Jonathan, this is lovely, but I feel like I'm a visitor, not her mother. Your family completely ignores me. Auntie Rose just gave Talia a piece of fried fish. She's not supposed to have that yet." Jonathan, basking in the familiar warmth and ease of his home country, was initially dismissive. "Baby, this is just how it is. Relax. They love her. They know what they're doing. It's different here. It's the culture. The culture doesn't get to override what we've agreed upon as parents." Siobhan shot back. "We have rules for a reason. You're supposed to back me up, but you're just disappearing into the crowd." The tension reached a boiling point during a crowded, joyful family outing to Grand Aunt's Beach. As Jonathan was laughing with his cousins, Auntie Rose once again tried to subtly change Talia's nap time, claiming the sea air would soothe her better than the crib. Siobhan snapped. Auntie Rose, with all due respect, I am her mother. She sleeps at 12:30, in the shade, and I need you to give her back to me now. A hush fell over the family gathering. The look on Auntie Rose's face was a mixture of surprise and genuine hurt. The public confrontation, so atypical for the polite, deferential culture, was deeply embarrassing for Jonathan. He rushed over, pulling Siobhan aside near the palm trees, his voice low and angry. What was that? You don't speak to my auntie that way. You can't just come here and disrespect the elders. Disrespect? Siobhan's eyes flashed. I'm respecting us. I'm respecting the boundaries we built in Chicago. You brought me here to see where you came from, but you're expecting me to give up who I am and how we parent. You're putting your past comfort above our present partnership, Jonathan. Her words hit him like a cold wave. He looked past her to his family, who were now watching them with concerned expressions. Then, he looked at Siobhan, her defiance, her commitment, the same fierce protective instinct that had made her fall for his steady efforts. He realized she wasn't attacking his family, she was defending their family, their decisions, and their unity. Later that evening, in the quiet of their rented apartment, Jonathan apologized, truly understanding. I'm sorry, Siobhan. I was being a tourist, not a partner. I didn't defend you. You're right. We are Unit Talia, no matter where we are. The next morning, Jonathan went to Auntie Rose alone. He spoke not with accusation, but with love and respect. He explained that Siobhan was a great mother, that their Chicago life was structured, and that they needed the family's support to uphold their rules, even if they seemed strange. Auntie Rose, seeing the man he had become, a man who valued his wife and his new family unit, softened. She embraced him. When Siobhan walked in, Auntie Rose pulled her close. You are a lioness, Siobhan. You fight for your cub. I respect that, but you must also teach me your ways. Over the next few days, the atmosphere transformed. Auntie Rose still offered advice, but always with a gentle, if you like, and Siobhan taught her the new baby sign language for more. The trip, initially a source of division, became a profound confirmation of their partnership. They realized that their love wasn't about erasing their differences, but about making a bridge between New York, Granada, and Chicago. They flew home, tired but profoundly connected, ready to close on their new home, Talia's first taste of the Spice Isle now a cherished family memory. Four corners of the home. The plane landed smoothly in Chicago, bringing Jonathan, Siobhan, and Talia back to the crisp, familiar air of the city. Their bond was stronger, forged in the intense heat and love of the Spice Isle. The next milestone was the closing on their new home. The closing day was scheduled for a cold, clear October morning. Jonathan, meticulous as ever, had triple-checked the paperwork. Siobhan was vibrating with excitement. They sat across the table from their attorney in the cellars, the house key glinting on the table between them. Just as the pen hovered over the final signature, the office door opened, and a woman entered with a girl who looked like a miniature, slightly more serious version of Siobhan. The girl was poised, with striking, observant eyes, and carried a worn backpack. I apologize for the interruption, the woman, who Siobhan immediately recognized as a longtime friend, said nervously. Siobhan, I tried calling, but your daughter needed you. Jonathan froze. He slowly lowered his pen and looked at Siobhan, a cold dread washing over him. Jonathan, this is Zuri, Siobhan said, her voice trembling slightly as she stood up to hug the 9-year-old girl. My daughter. Zuri, this is Jonathan. The silence in the room was thick. Zuri offered a polite, practiced smile. Jonathan felt the room spin. 9 years old. This wasn't just a child, this was a history he didn't know, a past life Siobhan had completely shielded him from. They signed the papers in a haze of professional efficiency, the joy of their purchase utterly eclipsed. Outside the lawyer's office, the confrontation was immediate and devastating. A 9-year-old daughter, Siobhan? You never told me you had a 9-year-old daughter? Not in the DMs, not on the dates, not after Talia, not before we bought a house together? Jonathan's voice was low, raw with betrayal. The man who valued honesty and stability above all else felt his foundation crumbling. Siobhan's eyes were wet with unshed tears. I know, Jonathan. I know. I was terrified. Zuri lives with her paternal grandmother in New York and comes to visit sometimes, but the arrangement is complicated. She's my whole heart, but I was so scared that if I told you, you'd delete me for good. The memory of his ultimatum echoed in the air. Girl, if you don't want to talk to me, I'm going to delete you. Siobhan had fallen in love with his commitment, but his bluntness had also instilled a fear of ultimate rejection. She feared he wouldn't accept the complication of an older child in the shadow of another father. After everything, Granada, the co-parenting struggles, you let me believe we were building a family of 3, he whispered, turning away, the weight of the new house suddenly crushing. They spent the next week barely speaking, yet still caring for Talia, now with the quiet, curious presence of Zuri, who seemed to sense the immense tension. One afternoon, Jonathan found Zuri sitting alone on the living room floor, drawing a complicated-looking house plan. That's a nice drawing, he said, sitting down cautiously. It's my new room, Zuri said, looking up. I'm going to paint it purple. Mommy says I can. She says now that we have a house, maybe I can come live with you guys more often. Zuri's simple hope was a mirror to Jonathan's own deepest desire, a full, complete family life. He looked at Zuri, then at Siobhan watching them from the doorway. He saw not a secret, but a girl who needed stability and a mother who was paralyzed by fear. He remembered his own journey, state to state, searching for that better life. He finally had it, a woman who fought for him, a precious baby girl, and now, a new home. Could he let a 9-year-old's secret destroy the decades of effort it took to build this? He turned to Siobhan, his voice firm but tender. I need time, Siobhan. I need to understand why. But, Zuri is family, and we own a house together. We don't break this. We learn to parent 2 daughters now. Siobhan walked to him, tears finally falling, and hugged him fiercely. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for not deleting me. They spent the evening explaining to Zuri and Talia, who only giggled at her older sister, that they were finally moving into their new home. It wasn't just a move. It was the start of an even larger, more complicated, and infinitely more fulfilling family unit, 4 hearts, 4 histories, finally rooted in one home in Chicago. The man who sought stability and the woman who feared rejection had found a love big enough to embrace not only their shared dreams but also their hidden pasts. Epilogue. Home. 6 months later, the brick house in Lincoln Square was a whirlwind of contented activity. It smelled permanently of Siobhan's strong coffee, Jonathan's favorite Grenadian spices, nutmeg and cinnamon, and the faint, sweet scent of baby lotion. Jonathan had thrown himself into being a stepfather to Zuri with the same relentless consistency he brought to all aspects of his life. He made sure Zuri's new purple room was perfect, helped her with her 4th grade homework, and learned how to navigate her New York sharp wit. Zuri, initially wary, began to lean on Jonathan's reliability, finding comfort in the steady presence her mother had found years before. Siobhan, relieved of the weight of her secret, flourished. She and Jonathan still had disagreements, especially when merging their co-parenting styles for 2 very different age groups, but they addressed them openly at their established Saturday morning check-ins. They had learned that conflict was simply a process, not a threat. One sunny Saturday afternoon, the family was in the backyard. Jonathan was carefully planting a small, hardy lilac bush, a symbol of permanence. Zuri was meticulously drawing a portrait of Talia, who was attempting to crawl across the lush new grass. Siobhan watched them from the back porch, a profound sense of peace settling over her. She thought about the early days, the cold Chicago winter, the distant replies, and the fear that had almost cost her everything. Jonathan looked up from the dirt, his face streaked with sweat and a broad, easy smile on his face. He saw Siobhan watching, and he mouthed 2 silent words across the yard. We made it. The man who had searched state to state for a better life finally found it, not in an idealized location, but in the complex, sprawling, and utterly real love of his family. His roots, stretching from Granada through New York, had finally anchored firmly in the soil of his Chicago home, a foundation strong enough to hold his wife, his baby girl, and his wise, wonderful stepdaughter.